Why strong minds are not afraid of being misunderstood. There's a quiet strength in walking away from an argument that could be won. There's power in not explaining yourself when the world demands clarity. And there is courage, real, soul-deep courage, in being misunderstood and remaining unshaken by it. We live in a time where being seen, heard, and understood feels like survival. Social media trains us to validate our existence through likes, comments, and shares. We're wired to explain, defend, and curate every angle of who we are to avoid misinterpretation. But strong minds, those anchored in self-awareness and inner peace, have learned to let go of the need for approval. They are not afraid of being misunderstood, because they understand something deeper. Truth doesn't need validation to remain true. Imagine standing in a storm while people shout at you from all directions, twisting your words, mocking your silence, or misjudging your choices. The instinct to scream back, to clear your name, is natural, but strong minds resist that pull. Not because they're passive, not because they're cold, but because they've transcended the need to be understood by everyone. Being misunderstood is inevitable. Even the wisest thinkers, from Socrates to Marcus Aurelius to Einstein, were misinterpreted in their time. Some were ridiculed, some were punished, but they remained focused on what mattered most, living in alignment with their values, not in sync with public opinion. This is the silent path of the strong. It's not loud, flashy, or defensive. It's calm, grounded, steady, and it begins with one simple truth: you don't owe everyone an explanation. There's something liberating about no longer fearing someone's misunderstanding of you. When you know who you are, when your actions align with your values, you realize that not everyone can understand you. Some people are too wrapped in their own projections to see you clearly. Some aren't ready to accept your truth because it challenges theirs. And some, frankly, are committed to misunderstanding you because it serves their ego better than the truth ever could. Strong minds don't chase clarity from these people. They don't exhaust themselves trying to be seen in perfect light. They stop performing. They choose inner peace over public perception. It's not always easy. In fact, it's often painful. The fear of being seen as wrong, or difficult, or cold, can feel like social death. But strong minds endure that discomfort because they know it's temporary. They know that explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you is like trying to wake a person who's pretending to be asleep. It's futile. And it only drains your energy. So instead, they walk in silence. Think about the most respected individuals in history. The ones we quote, admire, or study. Rarely were they universally liked or understood in their lifetime. Jesus was crucified. Gandhi was imprisoned. Martin Luther King Jr. was vilified. Even in modern times, visionaries like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk were called arrogant, strange, or reckless. Why? Because their minds moved differently. Their thoughts disturbed the status quo. And people always misunderstand what they cannot categorize. To walk your own path is to risk being seen as difficult. To speak your truth is to risk being labeled confrontational. To remain silent is to risk being seen as weak. And to let go is to risk being called cold. But the strong do it anyway. Because their strength is rooted not in the need to be seen, but in the refusal to be shaken. Philosophers from the Stoic tradition understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, It is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Being misunderstood, then, is only painful if you judge it to be. If you need approval, misunderstanding becomes a threat, but if you are secure, it becomes background noise. Strong minds master that judgment. They don't suppress emotion, but they rise above emotional dependence on others' perceptions. They have learned that silence is a language. 2. Not every battle needs to be fought. Not every accusation needs a defense. And not every person is worth your energy. There is strength in restraint, in choosing to protect your peace over proving a point. There's also a deep psychological element to this. According to Carl Jung, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent. So many people project their wounds onto others, hoping to feel better about their own inner chaos. When you live authentically, when you break free from cultural conditioning, family expectations, or societal roles, you will inevitably be misunderstood by those who never dared to question the script they were handed. Strong minds understand this. They see through projection. They recognize when judgment is not about them, but about someone else's pain, and they don't absorb that energy. Instead, they hold space for misunderstanding. They let others say what they must, and they continue walking. They know that a lion doesn't turn around when a small dog barks. This doesn't mean strong people never explain themselves. It doesn't mean they isolate or act superior. On the contrary, strength allows for humility, but it also filters what deserves attention. Strong minds choose their audience. They explain only to those who are ready to listen, not just to respond, but to truly understand. To the rest, they offer silence, not as an act of arrogance, but of clarity. They understand that trying to be understood by everyone is like trying to drink the ocean with a teaspoon. It will never be enough. And in the pursuit, you'll lose yourself. It takes time to get there. Most of us have spent years trying to be seen. We crafted identities based on how others perceived us. We molded ourselves to be palatable, agreeable, and safe. We said yes when we wanted to say no. We smiled through misunderstanding, afraid to be alone in our truth. But there comes a turning point, a quiet revolution inside, a moment when you realize that being misunderstood is not the enemy. Losing yourself is. That's when strength is born. Not the kind that flexes, shouts, or dominates, but the kind that stands still in a storm, that lets others speak, accuse, assume, and chooses not to react. That is mastery. The greatest minds were often loners, not because they hated people, but because they valued their peace. They understood that clarity sometimes demands solitude. That growth often begins when you walk alone. And that strength is not in being understood, but in understanding yourself so deeply that no misunderstanding can shake you. Strong minds embrace that loneliness. They transform it into creativity, insight, and resilience. They see solitude not as a punishment, but as sacred space, a place where their soul can breathe without the noise of other people's expectations. It's in that silence that truth emerges. In a world obsessed with being seen, strong minds are focused on being whole. They're not chasing applause. They're cultivating alignment. They're not addicted to validation. They're grounded in truth. And because of that, they can let others misunderstand them, without losing sleep. Because they know the difference between being alone and being abandoned. They know the difference between solitude and isolation. And they know that a misunderstood truth is still truth. So if you feel misunderstood, don't rush to explain yourself. Pause. Breathe. Ask, do I really need to be understood in this moment? Or do I just need to stand in my truth, quietly and fully, without permission? Strength is not in how loudly you speak, but in how confidently you remain silent when silence is wisdom. Let them misunderstand. Let them judge. Let them walk away. The right people will understand you by how you live, not by how well you explain yourself. The rest? They were never your audience to begin with. And that's not something to fear. That's something to be grateful for. Because in the end, the strongest minds are not those who shout to be understood. They are the ones who are at peace, even when they are not.